This is it, folks. I hope you're excited because we're just a few days away from the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I've been so excited ever since the games were announced, and through a nearly 9-month period, Nintendo and Game Freak have given us just enough information to get the hype built up extremely, while not just laying down all their cards and showing us everything. I can't even remember the last time we were this close to a game's release without knowing what so many of the Pokemon look like. It's sort of incredible to watch the metamorphosis of how they handle advertising the game, but I was really into it, and even with what little they showed off during this build-up, they still left us with a lot to go over.
It's actually pretty refreshing to go into a game knowing so little, as it really gives the players the opportunity to discover and explore in ways they really haven't felt in quite a long time. But with that being said, some people may not feel comfortable buying these games just yet because of how little their knowledge of the game may be. So that's where I and the Prime Directive come in. Being the Pokemon experts that we are, we can tell those of you that are on the fence exactly what you need to know before making a purchase, while also understanding that what we may find to be great, others may not.
Who better to trust with your Pokemon knowledge building than an actual Pokemon and a mad scientist? If your answer was leakers on Twitter, you're wrong! Please, for all that is good, if you're watching this video prior to the release of the games, keep your insider knowledge to yourself. Nobody wants to see any spoilers for the story or the available Pokemon. So if you're someone who's looking for a little bit of an edge one way or the other on picking up these games, this video is for you. Allow me to welcome you to version exclusive, special Prime Directive and Collector Dexter edition, where today we'll fill you in on everything you need to know before buying Scarlet and Violet. Where should we start, Collector?
Well, I think we should start at one of the biggest points of contention in Pokemon games as of late, being the graphics. I find this to be pretty weird if I'm totally honest. I feel like no one truly cared about Pokemon's graphics until the series made the jump to the Switch. I mean, you can read plenty of reviews that like to focus on the technical issues the several titles have had, but the frame rate is mostly stable, with pop-in only being particularly egregious when traveling fast. So that really just leans into graphics being the remaining technical problem. Now don't get me wrong, I too want Pokemon to be a far prettier franchise, but I don't feel they look as awful as people make them out to be. In fact, I personally feel it looks pretty solid, to be honest, given the size of the project. That said, if graphics are one of the most important things to you, then I don't believe this is the one for you. I will say, if it's not too much of a bother to you, then when you compare Sword and Shield to Legends Arceus, and then that game to Scarlet and Violet, I feel serious steps have been made in creating a more consistent art style with higher fidelity, which I would hope instills some confidence in players that Game Freak truly does care and makes serious efforts into making the best games they can. I would also like to note that previews that we got from outlets about a month or so ago did mention some pretty glaring technical problems, but the areas they noted, like the Sunflora side quest for the Grass Gym, have been shown to be vastly improved in trailers, meaning they played a much earlier build of the game, but that might be something you still want to look out for. The occasional bit of lag, some muddy textures and shadows and the like, but this isn't just a Pokemon problem, as the Switch is just getting old, but that's a conversation for another day.
Holy cow, you really went in and dissected that part pretty well, as one would expect from a scientist. I think of the major negatives for people in these games, there's only one true large issue aside from that for the people in the Pokemon fandom, and that's the lack of a true national Pokedex. The controversy began with Sword and Shield last generation is right back at the forefront of Scarlet and Violet. You simply won't be able to get every single Pokemon in these games whether you have them sitting in Pokemon Home or not. Now for me, I don't overly mind the fact that you can't get every Pokemon. Sure, I have a group of favorites, and if any of them aren't available in Scarlet and Violet, I will be disappointed, but I can't imagine letting that ruin the game for me. I like being challenged not to use my favorites all the time anyway, but I can see how for a lot of people that would go against a big part of Pokemon that they love, being able to literally catch them all and use their favorites. It's a shame, but the reality of the situation is that we're approaching 1,000 Pokemon, and the amount of space and raw work that would need to go into implementing all of them as usable creatures in these games is just not something entirely feasible to expect. You can bring up every argument you want about money and expectations, but at the end of the day, if Game Freak feels trying to squeeze 1,000 Pokemon into one region is too out of the scope of what they're trying to accomplish with this release, then that's just something that has to be accepted. Though, quite frankly, it didn't really turn out to be a problem with Sword and Shield. I mean, look at how much they sold in the end. I wonder if this issue is really the needle mover for people that social media tries to make us believe.
Whoa, looks like you had some mandibles on you as well. In general, I believe those 2 points are probably the only actual points of contention about the games. I think everything going forward people will either be neutral on or can look at positively. So I'll start us off with Team Star. For 3 generations in a row now, we've gotten the false evil teams, in which I mean that they have team in their name, but they're no longer the big bad of the region anymore. In Alola, that fake out was with Team Skull just being some delinquents, whereas the real threat lied in the hands of Lusamine and the Aether Foundation. Even then, they weren't particularly evil, just slightly misguided. You know, Prime and I did a whole video about this, so maybe check that out. Continuing onwards, we got the same thing again in Galar with Team Yell, being ruffian fanboys of Marnie with the actual antagonists being Chairman Rose and Marco Cosmos. So now with Team Star and Paldea, we have a bunch of rebels from the academy the player attends just kind of causing ruckus, but no real idea on what or who the main antagonist is this time around. Which is interesting, but that's this generation's news cycle for you. With all of that being said, I think depending on how Team Star actually behaves in the games, plenty of people could find them enjoyable to take on. However, if they end up being more akin to Team Yell, I can see plenty of people rolling their eyes already. I guess it just depends on if you actually care about the ubiquitous evil team truly being the evil ones anymore. However, in my opinion at the very least, Team Star seems interesting and may provide an actually decent challenge, which I'm sure can be appreciated by many of you, no?
Sure sounds like it'll probably be interesting to find out just what Team Star brings to the table. They could either be a big gag or something truly sinister, or maybe something entirely different, who knows? How about we get into the major positives of these new games, and boy are there a few. Let's start with probably the biggest aspect of the releases, their open world. People have asked forever for open world Pokemon games, and while Legends Arceus was definitely a step towards presenting a game like that, Scarlet and Violet are leaping right into the deep end. There are 3 different ways to enjoy your adventure, whether it be taking on some cool giant Pokemon in the path of Legends, completing the gym challenge, or going toe-to-toe with Team Star on Starfall Street. All 3 of those are going to be valid ways to enjoy your journey, offering the most choice we've ever seen in a Pokemon game. You're also going to get to play with others via the Union Circle, which is of course a very cool thing that serves as a large upgrade from what Sword and Shield had with the Wild area. That's a major change, and there are many open world games with multiplayer that don't even offer that sort of deal. A big strike against the open world, however, is that there's no level scaling, so there's still an intended way that they want you to play through these games, but if Breath of the Wild taught me anything, you could still brute force your way to beating any game if they give you the chance. I think this is going to be the future of the Pokemon games, especially as Nintendo hardware evolves, and we've got an exciting first foray into the open world spectrum.
It's important to note that even in those early previews of the game, it didn't seem like anyone had any complaints of the open world feeling empty and having nothing to do in them, which is a huge plus considering that's a big problem with any game just wanting to make the jump into the big open world with no real thought put into it. So yeah, this is a big step in the right direction. So how about some smaller steps then? I want to talk about the quality of life upgrades as well as just small features that have been added this generation. Many previewers mentioned the menu being a bit more streamlined in how you viewed Pokemon in your party and accessed every other option. There are other little things like being able to have your Pokemon follow you straight from the get-go, overworld shinies returning, raid battles being timed as well as being able to attack independently of your raid buddies. There's also the Let's Go feature that allows you to send a Pokemon out into battle, gain EXP, and collect items. Although beware, you can and likely will knock out shinies this way. Also, playing with your Pokemon returns in the form of picnics, giving you plenty of modifiers from the different sandwiches you make, but also being the new means of breeding. No longer will you have to seek out the daycare center as it appears to always be with you in Paldea. But I think no quality of life feature is bigger than the level of customization Scarlet and Violet are introducing. Beyond just clothing, it seems there are far more hairstyles and colors than ever before, paired with the ability to change eye and mouth shape as well as adding other cosmetic features to your character. And if that wasn't good enough, Game Freak embraced the trend of allowing these options right at the beginning of the game no matter which gender you choose at the start. Giving the player options, especially ones like these, make people feel more included and is always a good thing no matter how you look at it. So I'm pretty happy with those changes.
The quality of life improvements in these games seem like they could be some of the most aggressive and game-changing since Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is incredibly exciting to think about seeing in action. Though, how about this one? The new mechanic! We've gone from Mega Evolution to Z-Moves to Dynamaxing, and now we see Terasterizing as the new big addition to in-game gimmicks. I'm not too sure if we're going to see any truly different visuals from the Pokemon, aside from them wearing their crystallized crowns, but it almost doesn't matter in this case. It's very much like the Z-Moves from the 7th generation, where Pokemon were not really changing their appearances, but instead were just getting access to powerful moves. Now we're seeing additions to already existing typings, and the addition of a new move to take advantage of that, all with a little crown being worn in a more crystallized appearance that isn't really any different from how the Pokemon look normally. It's potentially the biggest change for competitive that we've ever seen, as this isn't all just about pure power anymore. and strategy will be deployed every single battle to an entirely new degree, especially among people who are trying to find the one true, most powerful Pokemon when their original typings are paired with this new one added on. It's honestly invigorating to see a new mechanic that could potentially change so much of how the competitive scene is actually played out. I wonder if it's something that ends up being banned in unofficial tournaments and the like.
I can certainly see that being the case, and I definitely see certain Pokemon that can utilize the mechanic in a very broken way. It really gives Paldea its own unique twist that, while maybe not everyone finds particularly interesting as they really like their form changes, can certainly be fun for the competitive folks. But I think to close us out here, I'd like to talk about the biggest point of them all, and that of course has to be the Pokemon of Paldea. Of course we'll be having a decent amount of Pokemon returning, I'm sure, but I think a good focus should be on those new ones. As of writing this, we've had 23 officially revealed Pokemon, with 2 of them being shrouded in mystery. Naturally, we've got the likes of the starters, the cover legendaries, a Pikachu clone, and a ton of other seemingly early on Pokemon. Now, art will always be subjective, but I will say the Pokemon they've shown off here are really strong in my opinion. The likes of Lechonk and Cloth being instant certified hood classics. Very bizarre looking ghost types in Greavard and Gimmighoul, and even a small taste of regional variants, both real and fake alike, with Paldean Wooper and Wiglet respectively. Oh, and of course there's just regular evolutions for old Pokemon in Farigiraf. Design philosophy and trying for unique yet familiar concepts has really been the true shining light for Scarlet and Violet in my opinion. And with the recent showing of Great Tusk and Iron Treads, it seems that there is far more in store for trainers this Friday. I truly believe Game Freak is really putting their best foot forward with designs here. And with the fact that they've only shown 23 of a roster likely being in the 80s to 90s, there are going to be a lot of new and fun creatures for us all to discover on the 18th.
So that's really all there is to go over, I'd say. A pretty comprehensive look at the negatives and the positives that are probably on anyone's mind when thinking about purchasing one of these new Pokemon adventures. Obviously, I speak for us both when I say we will indeed be playing them, but we hope that those who were on the fence when watching this video were influenced one way or the other with their plans on jumping into the 9th generation.
Yeah, of course it was no surprise we were going to be pretty biased in terms of what we like about these games before launch, but I think I can speak for the both of us this sentence around in saying that I think we did a pretty decent job of pointing out things that others may not like when it comes to picking up the game. Are you a big graphics person or someone that needs Pokemon games to have every creature in it? Well, these are probably not for you. But if you're someone that just wants a Pokemon game with some fundamental changes to spice up the series a little bit, well then these just might be the games for you.
Well, that will be about it for us today, as we have to get back to waiting to play Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on our Nintendo Switches. Let us know if you guys are enjoying the game, if you somehow got here after they were already out, or if we influenced any of your spending decisions. Also, stick with us throughout the rest of the year, as every week we're going to be bringing you some nice Scarlet and Violet content to quench any insatiable thirst you have for Pokemon. That'll do it though. So I'm the Prime Directive.
And I'm Collector Dexter.
And we'll see you folks next time.